Welcome to English Stories for Listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you genuinely want to be fluent in English.
My name is Lily, and I live in a small, cozy house in a quiet village in England. The village is surrounded by green fields and tall trees that sway gently in the wind. The houses here are made of red bricks, and the roofs are covered with old, grey tiles. The air is fresh and filled with the sweet smell of flowers that bloom in every garden. I live with my mother and father, and we have a little dog named Toby who loves to play in the fields. Every morning I wake up to the sound of birds singing outside my window. The sun rises slowly, spreading warm light across the village. I get out of bed and look outside, watching the world come alive. The streets are quiet, and only a few people are out, walking their dogs or going to the small shops to buy bread and milk. I feel lucky to live in such a peaceful place, where everyone knows each other and smiles as they pass by. I go to school in the nearby town. It's a big school with many children from different villages. I enjoy learning new things every day, especially when my teacher tells us stories. Listening to stories has always been my favorite part of the day. I love how the words paint pictures in my mind, taking me to faraway places and introducing me to new people and adventures. One day, as I was walking home from school, I saw a little bird sitting on the ground. It looked hurt and couldn't fly. I carefully picked it up and brought it home. My mother helped me make a small bed for the bird in a box. We gave it some water and crumbs of bread. I named the bird Sky, and every day after school, I would sit by its side and tell it stories. I told Sky about my day at school, about the books I read, and the dreams I had. As the days passed, Sky started to get better. It fluttered its wings and chirped softly whenever I talked to it. I felt a special connection with Sky, as if it understood every word I said. One evening, when the sun was setting, I opened the window and let Sky fly away. It soared into the sky, free and happy. I watched until it was just a tiny speck in the distance, and I felt both happy and sad. I knew Sky had to return to its home, but I missed it already. A few weeks later, something wonderful happened. I was sitting in the garden, reading a storybook, when I heard a familiar chirping sound. I looked up and saw Sky sitting on the fence, looking at me with its bright eyes. I couldn't believe it. Sky had returned to visit me. From that day on, Sky would come by every now and then, and I would always greet it with a smile and a new story to share. As I grew older, I continued to love listening to and telling stories. I realized that stories are not just words on a page or sounds in the air. They are like magic, connecting people and helping us understand each other better. Stories make us feel emotions, sometimes making us laugh, sometimes making us cry. I remember one story that touched my heart deeply. There was a girl named Emily who lived in a small cottage at the edge of a forest. She was kind and gentle, always helping others. One winter, Emily found an old man shivering in the cold near her cottage. He was lost and had no place to go. Emily took him in, gave him warm clothes, and shared her food with him. The old man thanked her with tears in his eyes, saying he had never met someone so kind. As the winter days passed, Emily and the old man became good friends. They would sit by the fire, and the old man would tell Emily stories from his past. He told her about his adventures, his family, and the dreams he once had. Emily listened with a warm heart, feeling the old man's joy and sadness as if they were her own. But one day the old man didn't wake up. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep, with a gentle smile on his face. Emily cried for a long time, but she knew that she had given the old man a peaceful end to his journey. The story of Emily and the old man taught me the power of kindness and the importance of listening to others' stories. Sometimes all someone needs is a kind heart and a listening ear to feel understood and loved. This is why I believe that listening to English stories can help improve our language skills and make us better people. When we listen to stories, we learn new words, phrases, and ways of expressing ourselves. We also learn about different cultures, ideas, and emotions. Listening to stories helps us understand how to use the language naturally, how to express our thoughts and feelings in a way that others can understand. It's like having a conversation with a friend, where we share not just words, but also our hearts. I encourage everyone who wants to improve their English to listen to as many stories as they can. It doesn't matter if the story is long or short, funny or sad. Every story has something to teach us. As you listen, pay attention to the words, the emotions, and the way the story is told. Try to imagine the scenes in your mind, feel the emotions of the characters, and let the story become a part of you. Listening to stories is like planting a seed in your mind. With time, that seed will grow into a beautiful tree, full of new words, ideas, and emotions. The more you listen, the more your English will improve and the more confident you will become in using the language. So, find a quiet place, close your eyes, and let the stories take you on a wonderful journey. Every night after finishing my homework, I would sit by the window and listen to the stories my parents told me. They were stories of their childhood, of how they met, and of the adventures they had before I was born. Each story was like a precious gem, filled with memories and emotions that I held close to my heart. I would close my eyes and imagine the scenes they described, the people they spoke of, and the places they had visited. One story my mother told me often was about her grandmother, whom she called Nana. Nana lived in a big house at the end of a long road, surrounded by tall trees and a beautiful garden filled with roses. My mother would visit her every summer, and they would spend hours in the garden, talking and laughing. Nana would tell my mother stories from her own childhood, stories about the war, and stories about the love she had for her family. My mother said that Nana had the most beautiful voice, and listening to her stories felt like being wrapped in a warm blanket. One summer, when my mother was 10 years old, Nana fell ill. She was very old, and the illness made her weak. My mother was heartbroken, but she stayed by Nana's side, holding her hand and listening to her stories. Even though Nana was sick, she continued to tell stories, as if the words gave her strength. One day, Nana told my mother the most beautiful story she had ever heard. It was about a young girl who lived in a village by the sea. The girl loved the ocean more than anything in the world. She would spend her days on the shore, watching the waves and dreaming of the adventures that lay beyond the horizon. One day, the girl found a small, broken boat washed up on the shore. She decided to fix the boat, even though she had never built anything in her life. Every day, she would work on the boat, using pieces of wood and rope she found along the beach. The villagers laughed at her, saying she was wasting her time, but the girl didn't listen. She believed in her dream, and she knew that one day she would sail away on that boat and explore the world. After many months of hard work, the boat was finally ready. It wasn't perfect, but it was strong enough to carry her. Early one morning, before the sun had risen, the girl set sail. She waved goodbye to the village, her heart full of excitement and hope. As she sailed further and further from the shore, she felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. The ocean was vast and endless, and the girl knew that she was on the adventure of a lifetime. Nana's story ended there, and my mother said that it was the last story Nana ever told. A few days later, Nana passed away peacefully in her sleep, just like the old man in Emily's story. My mother cried for a long time, but she knew that Nana had left her with something special, the gift of storytelling. Every time my mother told that story, she felt as if Nana was still with her, guiding her and watching over her. As I listened to my mother's story, I felt tears in my eyes. It was a story filled with love, hope, and the courage to follow one's dreams, no matter how impossible they might seem. It made me realize how powerful stories can be, how they can touch our hearts and inspire us to be better, braver, and kinder. Listening to these stories, I learned that life is full of ups and downs, joys and sorrows, but it's the stories we carry with us that help us make sense of it all. Stories teach us about love, loss, friendship, and the importance of never giving up. They remind us that we are not alone, that others have faced challenges and overcome them, and that we too can find the strength to keep going. As I grew older, I started to collect stories from my own life. I wrote them down in a little notebook, each story a piece of my journey. There was the story of the time I got lost in the woods and was found by a kind stranger who guided me home. There was the story of the day my best friend moved away and how we promised to stay in touch even though we were miles apart. And there was the story of the day I found a stray cat and decided to take it home, even though my parents weren't too happy about it at first. Each of these stories was a part of who I was, a reflection of the experiences that had shaped me. I realized that by telling these stories, I was keeping the memories alive, not just for myself, but for others too. And as I shared these stories with my friends, I noticed something amazing. They started to share their own stories with me, stories that were just as beautiful, funny, and sad as mine. We would sit together for hours, talking and laughing, sometimes crying, as we shared the moments that had touched our lives. It was through these stories that we grew closer, understanding each other in ways that words alone couldn't explain. We learned from each other's experiences, finding comfort in knowing that we were not alone in our struggles and joys. One day, I decided to tell my story in front of my class. I was nervous at first, worried that I might forget my words or that no one would listen. But as I started to speak, I felt a calmness wash over me. I told the story of Sky, the little bird I had saved, and how it had returned to me. I spoke about how Sky had taught me the importance of kindness, hope, and letting go. When I finished, the room was silent, and I could see tears in the eyes of some of my classmates. It was then that I realized the true power of stories. They have the ability to touch people's hearts and make them feel something deep inside. After class, my teacher came up to me and said that my story had moved her. She told me that I had a gift for storytelling and that I should continue to share my stories with others. Her words filled me with confidence, and I knew that I wanted to keep telling stories, not just for myself, but for everyone who needed to hear them. From that day on, I made it a point to listen to as many stories as I could. I listened to my grandparents' stories about the old days, to my friends' stories about their dreams and fears, and to strangers' stories about their lives. Each story was a treasure, a glimpse into another person's world. And the more I listened, the more I learned, not just about English, but about life, love, and what it means to be human. As I listened, I noticed that my English improved too. I started to understand new words and phrases, and I became more confident in speaking. Listening to stories helped me learn how to express myself better, how to convey my thoughts and emotions in a way that others could understand. It was like I was piecing together a puzzle, and with each story, a new piece fell into place. I realized that listening to stories was one of the best ways to learn English. It was natural, fun, and it didn't feel like studying at all. Instead of memorizing words and grammar rules, I was learning through real conversations, through the emotions and experiences of others. And because I was emotionally connected to the stories, the words and phrases stayed with me much longer than if I had just read them in a textbook. So, if you want to improve your English, I have one simple piece of advice: listen to stories. Find stories that interest you, stories that make you feel something. It could be a story from a book, a story someone tells you, or even a story you hear on the radio or in a podcast. The more you listen, the more you'll learn, and the more confident you'll become in using the language. Remember, stories are not just about words. They are about people, emotions, and experiences. They teach us about the world and about ourselves. They help us connect with others and understand their perspectives. And most importantly, they make learning English enjoyable and meaningful. So, go ahead and immerse yourself in the world of stories. Listen with an open heart and let the stories take you on a journey of discovery. You never know where a story might lead you or what you might learn along the way. And who knows, one day you might find yourself telling your own story, touching the hearts of others, just as the stories you listened to touched yours.